Hello, true believers and newcomers alike. Welcome, happy Friday. I hope this video finds you well. I'm Superfly Comics Guy, and today I thought we'd do something very special. With the upcoming reprint of this book scheduled for June of 2022, I figured now would be the perfect time to dive into the origins, the start of it all, and my very first omnibus, the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus, Volume 1. Join me as we take a look at the cover, the spine, the contents collected, the build quality, and of course, a flip through where I share some of my thoughts, opinions, and recommendations. If you like this video, you know how to show it. And if you're a nerd like me, leave a comment down below and let's have a discussion. But without further ado, strap on your web shooters and jump into your DeLoreans because it's time to take a web-slinging trip into the past as we dive into the origins of Marvel's most magnificent wall crawler. Let's do this. And welcome back, everybody. In front of you, you have the dust jacket to this book featuring the iconic, legendary cover to Amazing Fantasy 15, Spidey's very first appearance, done by Jack Kirby and I believe Steve Ditko as well. I think they collaborated on this cover, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is the third printing, so at the time this was actually the standard cover for this book. The direct market cover was a more modern looking version of the same image by Alex Ross. The upcoming reprint is actually going to swap those two. This is going to be the direct market cover, and that Alex Ross cover that I mentioned is going to be the standard cover, which is more in line with what Marvel has been doing lately, where, you know, the standard cover has typically been a more modern looking piece of art, and then the direct market cover has been a piece from the material collected inside, usually a cover, for example. Take a look at the spine. Again, I said this is the third printing, came out in 2016, so you do have the older spine design. I'm pretty confident that when that reprint comes out in a couple months here, it's going to have the newer, smaller looking font that Marvel has been doing for their Silver Age books. Of course, you have the classic Silver Age cover gallery at the back, and this book collects Amazing Fantasy 15, Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 38, a couple of the annuals, A Strange Tales Annual 2, and the Fantastic Four Annual 1. So pretty straightforward. You're just going straight through Amazing Spider-Man for the most part. Cover price, $100 US, $113 in Canada. I picked this up back in 2018, I think, for like 70 something bucks off of Amazon. Ugh, how times have changed. I wish you could still get prices like that on Amazon. I try to avoid getting my books from Amazon these days, just because, like I said, you can't really get as good discounts anymore, and I had some bad experiences with packaging. But nevertheless, let's take a look under the dust jacket. And here we are under the dust jacket. A pretty standard design that Marvel does for all their Silver Age books. They keep it pretty simple, just all black with the title, Omnibus, same spine design as on the dust jacket, and just a plain black on the back. So that's right in line with all of the other Silver Age books that Marvel tends to put out. No surprises there. And let me just quickly show you the flaps of the dust jacket. On the left here, you have a quick blurb about the book and an introduction to Spider-Man, as if anybody really needed one. I mean, come on. And then a piece on the creators Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. And here we have the star of the show in all its glory, the book itself. We got an old style of bookend pages that was common for older Marvel omnibuses with this stone look to them. But yeah, I thought now would be a perfect time to show you guys this book with the reprint coming up, you know, just kind of help you make up your mind on if this is something you're interested in and want to pick up when that reprint comes out. We got a table of contents here. Love when they include that, taking you from Amazing Fantasy 15, August 1962, the first appearance, all the way to July of 1966. So you're getting the early years. We got a foreword here by Stan Lee, talking about how the series came to be, how the character was created. Interesting story. Definitely, I think you should read these as you're going through the omnibus. But in terms of the character himself, everybody's familiar with Spider-Man at this point. You know, Peter Parker's story. The nerdy kid, the odd one out, not very popular, the bookworm, gets bitten by a radioactive spider, discovers a whole new array of powers, and finds this newfound confidence within himself. And everything seems to be going great until he has to learn a harsh lesson that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Man, it's important to talk about how significant this series was for its time. You know, back then, superheroes were these big, strong, godlike beings. But suddenly, here comes this skinny high school kid that gets powers, and he's struggling through life, and he's just trying to do his best to make a difference. And this really changed the landscape for superheroes going forward. Suddenly, heroes could be relatable. They could have flaws. They could have tempers. They could have money issues, girlfriend problems. But look, just flipping through this book, it's crazy to think about how many iconic first appearances you're getting in here, just in this volume. It's nuts to think how much of the character's lore was established and solidified this early on in his, comics career. That doesn't always happen. I mean, if you find early issues, the first appearances of Daredevil or the X-Men, for example, they're very, very different compared to who they are now. They found their identities much later. But Spider-Man, he was pretty much Spider-Man right off the bat. And like I said, so many first appearances, like with the villains, you have the first appearance of the Vulture, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, the Green Goblin, yeah, there's Sandman, Mysterio, Electro, Lizard, Chameleon, Kraven the Hunter, Scorpion. So many characters that most modern Spider-Man fans will be like, yeah, of course I know those characters. Established this early on. And not just the villains, but Spider-Man himself. A lot of his qualities are in line pretty much with who he is today. You know, focusing on that Peter Parker versus Spider-Man conflict. That's a running theme throughout this book, but just throughout the character's history in general. You know, a common saying is that the best Spider-Man stories are when Peter Parker's world and Spider-Man's world collide. You know, for example, Peter Parker has to work at the Daily Bugle to get paid so he can support his aunt. But by doing that, Spidey will get chewed out in the newspaper by Jameson. Or Spider-Man may stop a crime. But because of that, Peter Parker is late for school. You know, it's that constant push and pull. But no matter how bad it gets, the charming thing about Spider-Man is that he always manages to somehow find a way to push through, and he's a really inspiring character because of that. But again, you got to keep in mind that this is the Silver Age. This is from the 60s, so the writing has aged. The writing is a bit hokey, but I don't think it's aged as badly as some of the other Silver Age books, but you have to know what you're getting into. For me, it was very important to have this book. I mean, this was my very first omnibus. Spider-Man's my favorite character, so it was very important to me just to have this for the historical significance. I mean, for my collection, I'm trying to build, I guess, a chronological history of the character, starting from his origin until the present. So it's really important to me to have this material to be able to revisit, find out where he came from and how he developed. But still, that aside, Silver Age writing is very, very wordy. You know, Stan Lee, he loved to write. Lots of old slang, and I think what'll work best is you kind of have to pretend like this is an old cartoon or something, like each issue is an episode of like that old 1960s Spider-Man show. If you remember that, all the memes. You kind of have to treat each issue as like super villain of the week or like a conflict of the week. You can't really binge a lot of this stuff just because of how dense some of the writing can be. But that's okay. You know, you read a few issues at a time. They're pretty self-contained. I don't think this is something you should just rush through. But I will say that the biggest downside of the writing, in my opinion, is how a lot of the female characters are written. I think that's one of Stan's weaknesses, but a lot of the female characters just kind of feel like they're just there to worry or be a damsel in distress. I mean, Aunt May, for example, is this super frail old lady who, one stiff breeze could knock her over and do her in. So that can get kind of tropey, but not too bad. Something we absolutely have to talk about, though, is this Steve Ditko art. Now, okay, it's very much of its time, sure. And perhaps it's not objectively the best looking art, nor is it my favorite. I mean, his people and poses could look kind of weird sometimes, but there is no denying that he defined Spider-Man's look. Like, you look at this is, his early material, and his design hasn't really changed that much. Right from the get-go, you have this iconic design for Spider-Man. And Steve Ditko was just a master of visual storytelling, from panel to panel, seeing the progression. That's something he's very, very good at. There's a couple of panels I have specifically in mind that I want to show you. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah, here's that specific image I was talking about. Honestly, I could have flipped to any page in this book to show you an example of the visual storytelling that Steve Ditko does so well, but this panel just stuck out to me so much, just enforcing that Peter Parker versus Spider-Man conflict. You have Peter Parker, Betty Brant, heartbroken, forced to be separated, and the cause of it is Peter Parker's alter ego as Spider-Man. Just so beautifully done. There's another one I have to show you too. The iconic Amazing Spider-Man 33. This issue has gone down in legendary status, just how it captures the spirit of everything that's good about Spider-Man. And it's been paid homage to by countless games, shows. Spider-Man Homecoming had a very similar sequence to this, but basically, Spider-Man has just come out of a very intense battle with a villain. He's exhausted, but now he's been trapped by an indescribable amount of rubble. The room is flooding. It seems all hope is lost. He can't get out. But the problem is, Aunt May has fallen very sick, and Spider-Man's got the only cure he can save her. But he has to get out. But he's stuck. But then it's that drive. He finds that drive within himself. He's got to do it for Aunt May. He won't let her down the way that he thinks he let Uncle Ben down. And he slowly but surely, he starts pushing and pushing. And incidentally, this sequence also gives us one of my favorite Spider-Man quotes ever, and it's right here. Anyone can win a fight when the odds are easy. It's when the going's tough, when there seems to be no chance. That's when it counts. Just perfectly capturing in one speech bubble the essence of Spider-Man and how he will not give up. He will find a way. And eventually it all culminates in this beautiful image by Steve Ditko. This was the Silver Age. You don't get a lot of big panels like this. It's typically very, traditionally paneled, 6 panels per page. So they reserve these big panels for these big moments. And man, does it work. So yeah, just a perfect example of Steve Ditko's excellent ability to convey a story through just images alone. And honestly, he had to be that way because this was created, these books at this time was created using what's called the Marvel way of storytelling. And what is that basically? Well, the general idea is Stan Lee was on so many books at once. He was writing Spider-Man, Daredevil, X-Men, Thor, and it was just getting very difficult to keep up with all of these books, the scripts and everything. So what they did was the artist would, Stan Lee would give kind of a breakdown of the story, tell that to the artist, and the artist would just go draw up panels and, kind of plot the story. And then Stan would come back later and fill in the dialogue, the word bubbles, the thought bubbles, and that's how they were able to keep up such a high output of books. Of course, there's controversy about like who did more, Lee versus Ditko. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the finished product, and the finished product is just, it's hard. I'm speechless. It's just incredible. It feels like such a privilege to have all this original material, because good luck tracking down an original issue of, I don't know, Amazing Spider-Man #7. And it's not going to look like this. The colors have been remastered so beautifully. The paper is high quality. You're not getting that old style newsprint or whatever. It's so cool to be able to read these issues from that long ago today. And another cool thing that I just have to talk about that what Marvel does with their Silver Age books is they include the letters pages, the fan mail that was coming in around this time. So you get to read, the letters that people were sending in around this time and just kind of find out what people were thinking of the stories at the time. It's like, it was like, I don't know, Twitter back then. And you kind of realize it's like, people were always complaining about stuff. We just weren't exposed to it as much. But you see some of the opinions that were going on back then. It's just a really cool window into the past. But let's take a look at some of the extras that you get with this book. And here we are with the extras. We have, how could a teenager be a superhero? Talking about what I mentioned before, how superheroes were meant to be these godlike beings, idealistic, the culmination of everything that humans can be, everything good about humanity. But then here comes Spider-Man, and he's this relatable character, the superhero who could be you. Exactly. Steve Ditko and the Amazing Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Quick lexicon of some of the collected issues, and here we have, this is the Amazing Fantasy 15 cover, but Steve Ditko's version. But they used the Jack Kirby version for the final issue, or the final product, I guess, would be more correct. Some original artwork by Steve Ditko. It's really, really cool to have this essentially time capsule into the past. Some key figures from the Mary Marvel bullpen. Look at the young Stan Lee there. Cover gallery, Marvel Tales. And here you go. This is, for the third printing, this was the direct market cover, but this will be the standard cover of the upcoming reprint by Alex Ross. And here we are with the build quality of this book. 1,088 pages is what you're getting, and this is some of the best binding from a Marvel book. Look at that. Huge eye, no gutter loss at all, and it's especially helped by, it's a Silver Age book. There's not really as many spread pages back then. Plus it's buffered by this outside panel in the middle, this little white space here. So you're not losing any artwork at all. This is just perfectly done. As for the page quality, I did mention this is the third printing from 2016, so no issues here. Decently thick, and you're not getting any color bleed from the other side. I'm a little worried that the reprint will probably be using thinner paper than this. I hope that isn't the case, but I guess only time will tell. Alright, so wrapping up my thoughts here on this book. Overall, I think, in my opinion, this is a really fun read and a super cool piece of history, especially since, as I mentioned, the art and colors have been remastered and updated to more modern standards. Like I said, good luck finding these issues otherwise. This is one of the best ways you can experience one of the most important pieces of Marvel history. But you have to keep in mind, it's not a book you binge. You have to know what you're getting yourself into before diving into a Silver Age book. But if that's something you're up for, you want to try out, then definitely go for this book. Otherwise, if you're looking for something more modern, a more modern starting point, the Roger Stern era is a good place to start. Or if you want even more modern, I suggest you take a look at my review of Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 Omnibus, because that's an amazing starting point as well. No pun intended. And that'll do it for my review of the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. Super special book to me, just my first omnibus, had to talk about it. And I hope this has been helpful. I hope this helped you, decide if you want to pick up the upcoming reprint or not. If you like this, leave a like. Let me know what you thought about this series. Are you a fan of Silver Age books? Are you a fan of Spider-Man? What was your first Spider-Man book, or what was your first omnibus? Let me know. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to catch you in another video real soon. Have yourself a great day and a good weekend. I've been Superfly Comics Guy, and until next time, keep reading. Bye, guys.